You know, there's a quiet kind of frustration many men over 60 carry around, a frustration that rarely gets voiced out loud. It's that feeling when you're doing everything right. You're eating better, walking more, maybe even cutting back on some of the usual indulgences. But still, something feels off. Maybe the energy you used to take for granted just isn't there anymore. Maybe the spark in the bedroom has dimmed, and despite your best efforts, the simple pleasures of life feel just a bit more distant. You start to wonder if this is just the way it has to be, if this slow fade is inevitable, like some cruel rite of passage. I want you to know, first and foremost, you're not alone in feeling this way, and more importantly, it's not the end of the road. I see this every week in my practice. Men who are tired, skeptical of gimmicks, quietly hopeful, but also worn down by promises that don't deliver. Let me tell you about James. James is 67, a man with a kind smile and a heart full of stories. When he first came to me, he described a life shadowed by exhaustion, not the kind that comes from a long day of work, but a deeper kind of fatigue that seeps into your bones. He told me about mornings when even getting out of bed felt like a struggle, and nights where he felt a distance growing between him and his wife, a distance he wasn't ready to accept. James had been doing what most people think is the answer: eating well, following the advice of friends and books, even starting his mornings with a handful of walnuts, those so-called superfoods meant to boost heart health and vitality. But nothing was changing. In fact, he said, the more he tried, the more defeated he felt. What struck me most about James during those early sessions wasn't just his physical exhaustion. It was the quiet resignation in his voice. It's a subtle thing, but for men who have spent decades being the pillars for their families and communities, admitting vulnerability can feel like admitting defeat. He confided that he had been avoiding conversations with friends, afraid they'd think less of him if they knew about his low energy and faltering confidence. This silence only deepened the isolation many men feel as they age, reinforcing the invisible barriers to seeking help or exploring new solutions. James's story reminded me that behind every physiological symptom lies a human experience, one filled with fears, hopes, and the weight of unspoken expectations. So before we dive deeper into the biology, let's pause to honor that emotional landscape, because vitality isn't only about muscles and hormones. It's about connection, dignity, and reclaiming a sense of self that sometimes feels lost in the shuffle of aging. Biologically, what James was facing is a perfect example of how interconnected our systems truly are. One mechanism that often flies under the radar but plays a central role is endothelial function. The endothelium is a thin layer of cells lining every blood vessel in your body, and it acts like a master regulator, controlling dilation, blood flow, and nutrient delivery. When this lining isn't working well, it can cause sluggish circulation, which directly impacts energy levels and the ability to sustain arousal. In men over 60, this endothelial dysfunction is often triggered by years of subtle inflammation, oxidative stress, and lifestyle factors that quietly damage these cells. That's why even small shifts, like reducing foods that contribute to inflammation, can have outsized effects. It's not just about cutting calories or following trends, it's about healing the very highways that deliver life's essential fuel to your tissues. Imagine trying to power a powerful car through narrow, clogged streets. The engine's potential is wasted because the roads aren't clear. That's what endothelial dysfunction feels like inside the body. Another piece of the puzzle is nitric oxide, a molecule produced by those endothelial cells that relaxes blood vessels and boosts circulation. Nitric oxide is crucial not just for physical energy, but also for the vascular response that supports bedroom performance. As men age, the natural production of nitric oxide declines, but thankfully, it can be supported through diet and lifestyle. This is one reason beets and leafy greens, which are rich in natural nitrates, can be so effective. They act like fuel for the nitric oxide pathway, helping to reopen those clogged roads and restore the flow. I remember explaining this to James with an analogy he could relate to. Think of nitric oxide as the city's traffic controller, waving flags to keep everything moving smoothly. When the controller is tired or overwhelmed, traffic backs up, and the whole system slows down. Once James understood this, it wasn't just another medical fact, it became a beacon of hope. He realized that his body wasn't failing him, it was waiting for support in the right places. But understanding the biology is only half the story. The other half is emotional, how these changes affect identity, confidence, and relationships. I could see the tension ease in James's shoulders when he started opening up about the strain on his marriage. He described moments when intimacy felt less like connection and more like obligation, moments when he wondered if the warmth between him and his wife would fade away entirely. These feelings are deeply human and too often brushed aside in clinical conversations. What helped James most was realizing that his struggles weren't a verdict, but a chapter that could be rewritten with compassion and patience. He began approaching his health not as a battle to win, but as a garden to tend, nurturing it with thoughtful changes rather than pushing for overnight fixes. That mindset shift was as transformative as any dietary or exercise adjustment. This is why, when we talk about powerful alternatives to nuts or supplements, it's never just about the foods themselves. It's about reclaiming agency in a landscape that can feel confusing and overwhelming. It's about choosing to listen to your body's messages, trusting that beneath the fatigue and frustration, there's a resilient strength waiting to emerge. And it's about knowing that support isn't about chasing youth. It's about honoring who you are now and who you want to become. James's journey was not linear. There were setbacks and doubts along the way, but with each small success, his sense of hope and connection grew stronger. And that, perhaps more than anything else, is the true foundation of vitality. A mind and body aligned in trust, ready to embrace life fully at every age. There was a moment, sitting across from him in my office, when he looked me straight in the eye and said, "Doctor, is this just who I am now? Is this the best I can expect?" That question hung between us like a fragile thread. It's the kind of question that many men hesitate to ask out loud because it touches on something deeply personal, on fears about losing control, about disappearing piece by piece. But it's the question that changes everything. Because it's only when we face that quiet despair honestly that we begin to see the path forward. And James's path started not with more nuts, supplements, or quick fixes, but with something far simpler and more profound. Understanding his body's unique needs and giving it the right kind of nourishment and care. Our bodies don't simply break down as we age, they recalibrate. It's a delicate, sometimes confusing process. Hormones that once surged robustly now ebb and flow differently. Blood vessels, those silent highways of life, can become less responsive, and the brain's wiring that signals desire and energy adjusts in ways that aren't always obvious. Think about it like this: your body is an old, powerful engine. It doesn't necessarily need more fuel, it needs the right kind of oil, the right kind of spark to keep running smoothly. The changes after 60 aren't about loss as much as they are about adaptation. For example, testosterone levels naturally decline, but that doesn't mean your drive or energy has to disappear. It means the system supporting those feelings might need a little tuning. One of the reasons James was feeling stuck was inflammation, not the obvious kind that comes with injury, but a quieter, chronic type that can simmer inside, often triggered by subtle food sensitivities. Some nuts, while healthy for many, can carry compounds like lectins or a high amount of omega-6 fatty acids that in sensitive individuals contribute to this low-grade inflammation. This inflammation can affect circulation, hormone balance, and even how the brain perceives energy and pleasure. So while walnuts and almonds get touted as miracle foods, they're not always the answer for everyone, especially for men like James, whose bodies were whispering a different story. What James needed was a shift, not just a substitution of one food for another, but a thoughtful, gentle recalibration of what his body was asking for. When he removed nuts from his diet and began focusing on 3 simple, powerful alternatives, The changes began quietly but unmistakably. He started waking up with clearer mornings, feeling a lightness he hadn't known in years. His sleep deepened, and the tension with his wife eased as his confidence in the bedroom returned, not as a forced performance, but as a natural reconnection. The first of these alternatives was Beets. I often describe Beets as nature's own circulatory booster, rich in nitrates that help relax blood vessels and improve blood flow. For men over 60, this can mean more oxygen and nutrients reaching the muscles and organs that fuel energy and intimacy. James started with a small glass of raw beet juice in the morning, sometimes mixed with a bit of cinnamon and banana to soften the earthiness. It was simple, approachable, and it worked gently alongside his body's rhythm. Next came pumpkin seeds and sunflower seed butter. These seeds are dense with zinc, a mineral intimately tied to testosterone production and immune function, but without the allergy or inflammation risks that some nuts carry. Adding a small handful of these seeds or a smear of sunflower seed butter into snacks or meals gave James a nutritional boost that felt nourishing rather than heavy. It's a small change with a profound effect, especially when paired with other supportive habits. And then, the greens. Leafy vegetables like arugula and spinach might seem humble, but their role in boosting nitric oxide production and fighting oxidative stress is essential. They act as protectors of blood vessel health and energy metabolism, helping men like James reclaim vitality not through extremes, but through steady, thoughtful nourishment. I encouraged him to add a handful of arugula to his lunch or dinner, drizzled with olive oil and lemon, simple, fresh, and deeply restorative. Of course, these dietary changes were only part of the picture. True vitality, especially beyond 60, comes from a broader harmony between body and mind. I always tell my patients that no food or supplement can replace the power of daily habits that reconnect you to your body's natural rhythms. For James, this meant beginning to greet the morning sun with intention, stepping outside for just a few minutes of sunlight to help regulate his internal clock and hormone cycles. It meant adding low-resistance strength training, exercises that don't overwhelm but gently coax the body to rebuild muscle and confidence. Even something as simple as a few minutes of focused breath work, slow, deliberate breathing, or humming exercises can elevate nitric oxide levels and calm the nervous system, supporting better circulation and mental clarity. Vitality isn't something that suddenly appears. It's a flame beneath the ash, waiting for the right kindling. And that kindling is often found in these small, consistent acts of care, acts that build upon one another, day by day. James's journey reminds us that the vitality of our younger years isn't lost, just transformed. It's quieter, perhaps, but no less powerful. It's rooted in wisdom, patience, and a deep respect for the body's evolving needs. If you're watching this and feeling some of James's story in your own life, the fatigue, the frustration, the quiet hope, I want you to know that it's possible to find your way back. Not by chasing every new supplement or trend, but by listening to your body's unique signals and responding with care and clarity. The changes I've described, removing certain foods, embracing others, and nurturing your body with supportive habits, are steps toward reclaiming a private, powerful part of yourself that deserves to shine. We're just getting started. In the next part of this conversation, I'll share how these shifts translate into real-world practices that nurture energy, vitality, and connection in ways that feel natural and achievable. Because this journey isn't about rushing to a finish line, it's about rediscovering the man you've always been beneath the surface, ready to live fully and joyfully at every age. As we continue this journey, it's important to remember that food alone won't carry the full weight of restoring your vitality. It's a tapestry woven from many threads: habits, mindset, movement, and the gentle rhythms of life itself. After all, energy and intimacy aren't just physical states. They are deeply intertwined with how you show up each day, how your body and mind converse in quiet harmony. One of the most overlooked yet profoundly effective habits is the simple act of greeting the morning sun. I know it might sound almost too simple to make a difference, but sunlight is a powerful natural cue that helps regulate your body's internal clock, your circadian rhythm. This rhythm orchestrates the ebb and flow of hormones like testosterone and cortisol, which in turn influence your energy, mood, and desire. When you step outside shortly after waking, even for just a few minutes, you send a clear message to your brain that the day has begun. This can help restore balance to sleep cycles and boost daytime alertness. For men over 60, whose hormonal rhythms may have become irregular, this morning ritual is like a reset button, a small yet potent nudge towards harmony. Alongside this, movement tailored to your body's current capacity plays a pivotal role. I often recommend low-resistance strength training, not because you need to become a bodybuilder, but because muscles are dynamic organs that produce hormones and support circulation. When James began lifting light weights 2 or 3 times a week, he noticed not just physical changes, but a subtle rekindling of confidence. His body began to feel like an ally again, rather than a burden. The beauty of strength training at this stage is its adaptability. It can be as gentle as lifting light dumbbells, or as simple as body weight exercises at home. The key is consistency. These moments of movement speak volumes to your body about its value and potential. Breathing exercises, often overlooked in mainstream conversations about men's health, deserve a special mention. Techniques like slow, nasal breathing or humming can boost nitric oxide levels naturally, which is vital for blood vessel dilation and circulation. You don't have to carve out hours. Just a few intentional breaths, several times a day, can help ease tension, improve oxygen delivery, and promote relaxation. When James added this simple practice, it was like adding fresh oil to his engine, smoothing out the rough patches he hadn't even noticed before. As these habits began to take root, James's transformation wasn't just physical, it was deeply emotional. The return of energy and vitality wasn't about chasing youth or denying age, but about reclaiming a quiet strength and dignity that comes with lived experience. There's a profound joy in rediscovering the power to engage fully with life, whether it's in the smile exchanged with a loved one, the warmth of a touch, or the confidence to look in the mirror without resignation. This journey is, in many ways, an invitation to reconnect with yourself on a level that transcends the surface, to remember that beneath every frustration, every moment of doubt, there lies a resilient, vibrant man who deserves to thrive. And thriving doesn't mean perfection. It means embracing the rhythms of your body and mind with patience and respect. It means understanding that energy, intimacy, and joy are not the sole province of youth, but are available to you now in your own time and way. So here's something to consider. What is one thing you can gently remove from your routine, be it a food, a habit, or a thought, that might be holding you back? And what is one nourishing practice you can add today, something small but meaningful that supports the man you're becoming? These aren't grand declarations, but quiet commitments to yourself, the kind that over time weave into a new story, one where vitality and connection are not lost chapters, but ongoing narratives filled with possibility. If you found yourself nodding along, feeling the weight and hope of this message, I encourage you to share it with someone you care about. Often, these conversations remain in the shadows because they feel private or vulnerable, but opening that space can be healing, not just for you, but for others walking a similar path. And if you want to stay connected to these grounded, honest conversations about men's health, I invite you to subscribe and join this community. This space is about real stories, real science, and real support. No gimmicks, no hype, just trust and care. I'm Dr. Camila Cruz, and I want you to know that it's never too late to feel like yourself again, to reclaim your energy, your vitality, your confidence. The man you are now is not a shadow of who you were, but a deeper, richer version, wiser, kinder, and ready to live fully and joyfully. This is your journey, and it begins with a single step taken with courage and compassion. Take that step today and watch how your story unfolds.